If there's a heaven on earth for harbor seals, this is it. The Puntledge River estuary at Courtenay on Vancouver Island. It's home to as many as 800 harbor seals who lounge on the log booms and have their young in the safety of ships sunk as a breakwater. Best of all, there's a steady supply of food being fattened up just upstream at the Puntledge River hatchery. Many of these tiny salmon will one day be dinner for the seals, and that's making Harry Janot's life hell.
Yes, they snack on these readily.
Raising and protecting salmon has been the focus of Janot's life. He grew up near the Puntledge and remembers when a seal in the river was a rare sight and a welcome one.
That's when there was a bounty on them. Yes, even as a kid, I used to make a little spending money for Christmas, taking noses from dead seals. Let's face it, we used to shoot them.
The bounty reflected worry over declining stocks of West Coast salmon. The fish had been chased off their ancient spawning grounds by logging and mining and hydroelectric projects. The only reason these chum salmon crowd the river now is because of the Puntledge River hatchery. This business has been Harry Janot's calling for more than 30 years.
We've had our problems, but we've had success too.
Up until about 5 years ago, Janot figured he and his crew were winning the long-term battle to fill the river with fish. Then the seals came along.
They've just steadily increased. And they teach their young how to fish this river, how to hunt in the river.
Janot's frustration reaches a boil every time he sees a seal come up with a salmon, especially the increasingly rare Chinook.
When Mr. Seal comes up with the big Chinook, that's when you get upset. Because every female they take 5,000 eggs.
Those eggs are essential raw material for the hatchery. After they're collected from the mature females, they're raised as smolts and released when they're about the length of your little finger. Janot always thought those smolts were small enough to escape the seals. He was wrong.
That's where they'd line up there, right straight across. And this light comes down here.
At Courtenay's 17th Street Bridge, the seals developed a whole new hunting strategy, catching the tiny smolts in the light cast on the river by the bridge.
And the seals would lay on their back underwater. There was 13 of them at the time I saw them, laying in the dark shadows, watching the fish come down in the light. And as the fish come down, they would just move their head and suck them in, just like sucking a milkshake up in a straw. These fish, 1.5 inches in length, and they were taking 40 to 45 fish a minute.
Janot knows those numbers are accurate because government experts spent days here documenting the seals' novel hunting technique. What they couldn't tell him is what to do about it.
They say we're going to study it again. Study, study, study. That's all we do is study something.
Harry Janot is a frustrated man, stuck between one government policy aimed at producing fish and another government policy aimed at protecting seals, and he's reaching the end of his rope.
You can't keep spending thousands of dollars raising fish, putting them out to be cropped by a bunch of seals. That's my personal opinion. That's not the department's opinion, that's my personal one. And I just don't know how much longer we're going to be able to maintain a run at the rate they're taking them.
You see, we harvest as much as 90% of the salmon stocks off the West Coast, and not a single seal. They've been a protected species since the late 60s. That's when governments decided, because there was no market for seals, and because their numbers had declined to about 12,000 on the entire BC coast, that they needed protection. Well, today there are more than 120,000 harbor seals in BC, but they're not likely to lose their protected status because of the public outcry that might bring. This is the Old House restaurant, which sits right next to the river in Courtenay. Window seats are popular here, especially when the seals are putting on a show, according to the restaurant's owner, Michael McLaughlin.
There can be 4 or 5, 6 seals out there. There can be a major storm blowing, whitecaps coming up the river, and these seals are jumping out with and shaking these fish, and the gulls are diving, and it's really entertaining for our folks here.
McLaughlin knows some of his patrons would fight any attempt to get rid of the seals, but others earn their livings in the salmon fishery, and the growing number of seals is making their futures look bleak.
They're such beautiful animals to watch, yet you see them destroying another industry. It's catching up, and there's not going to be much left unless something is done, but who's going to take that first step? Nobody seems to want to do that. It's a no-win situation.
Among the losers are commercial fishermen like George English. He says these days the big fish that got away was usually stolen right off the hook by a seal.
We've had cases where we've been fighting a spring salmon and the seals grabbed them while we were fighting them, right at the dock, just literally grabbed them and taken off with them.
English says frustration among fishermen is climbing even faster than the seal population. But he knows the government won't act without province-wide public hearings, and he figures most people in BC are squarely on the side of the seals.
We have a society that's been victimized by the Walt Disney cuddly brown-eyed friendly creature syndrome, and you look at a seal as being this wonderful little creature, but then when they get involved in their role as prey predator and they get out of control, you have a problem.
What's your big worry if we don't find an official solution to this?
We won't have any Chinook left. I only had 30 females this year in the fall run. That's hardly enough to keep a run going. The winter Chinook have gone. We no longer have a Puntledge genetic stock of winter Chinook.
And Jeannot believes unless something is done, and soon, the other species of salmon in the Puntledge will also be wiped out by seals.
Leave 10 or 15 in the river, I don't care, but not 60 or 70. I don't like to use the word shoot or kill, but I don't know what else we're going to do.
The government has looked at other ways to deal with the seals. They've moved some of them hundreds of kilometers away to the other side of Vancouver Island, but they always came back. Now they're studying the use of underwater noisemakers that scare the seals, but also interfere with other mammals like dolphins and whales, so that's no good. There's even been a suggestion that we put the seals on birth control. Jeannot says it's far too late for that.
You can go out and inoculate these things, shoot them, inoculate them with birth control pills. Some of these seals in here are 35 years old. So these young ones that you inoculate so they can't have any more young, they're still going to be here for 30 years.
30 more years. Plenty of time to destroy the work and the dreams that fueled Jeannot's 30-year career.
My goal was to have this river full of fish. Not only chum salmon, but Chinook salmon, coho, and steelhead. I took a lot of pride in that when I took over and started to operate this hatchery, or manage the hatchery, and I certainly haven't been able to do it, and it's very frustrating.
These days, the frustration is tinged with a new worry about people, not salmon. Jeannot is constantly and sometimes angrily asked what he's going to do to fix the seal problem. He can only shake his head.
There's nothing I can really do. The department has a policy that the seals are protected, and there's just nothing we can do. And I hope it doesn't get to the point where the people that want something done bad enough, like sport fishery fishermen, commercial fishermen, or whatever, don't take things into their own hands and start shooting.
It's illegal to shoot seals right now.
At this particular time, yes.
But it does happen.
It happens.
How many of these boats do you figure have guns on them?
I don't know how many got guns on them. I know a lot of guys carry. I carry a 22 on board.
And if you don't get an official solution to this, does that mean that eventually somebody says, okay, We'll fix it ourselves?
Maybe.
Harry Janot can retire in a few months and walk away from a problem that seems to have no solution. But he's not ready to admit defeat.
Are you going to win this one?
Oh, I'm trying.
Eventually?
Eventually, I'm going to win something before I leave. I'll win something on it.
The words hold far more confidence than Janot actually feels. He's convinced the only answer is a government-ordered seal kill. And he's equally convinced that will never happen. For CBC News, I'm Jim McQuarrie on the Puntledge River near Courtenay, BC.